What reactions can we assume will take place when you're doing a culture change or refreshing your culture? What are we going to see in our people, and how should we deal with those responses?
Well, I was thinking about this, and this takes me back to my face-to-face days, which are a bit dated now.
Yeah.
But actually, there's an interesting thing that happens. I used to do lots of mandatory work around bullying and harassment.
Mm-hmm.
And it was mandatory. It was organisationally mandated. So there was governance around attendance, which theoretically meant that everybody should have done the training.
Right.
But regardless of that fact, I'd have people that would sit there and they would do this and go, my manager's doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. And I would explain the governance, and I'd explain the stats, and I'd say there's reports that are being produced. That's why you're here, because we've noted, the organisation's noted that it's your turn. And what I would do was hold people able for their role in the change, rather than accountable for having attended. So I would say, the organisation says you have to be here. Why do you think this is an issue? And what do you want to talk about? What do we do to make this meaningful for you? And if we've got to be here for the next 3 hours, there's no point in being resentful. We know this is a problem. So what do we need to do to make this work for you? And if we get to the end of it and all we can say after 3 hours is this is deeply, deeply uncomfortable and unpleasant, that's fine. And then what I did in latter stages was went through, said quite explicitly, look, a lot more of you will have done this now. So I really want you to make an effort to pick up on what you've talked about in this. So I can start to see where this has got traction, because that will tell you it's working. If there's a willingness to engage with difficult subject matter. But the more I think about this, actually, the more I wonder if the symbols and the behaviours are actually covert at all, and whether or not we just need to pay more attention.
That leads me on to my next question, interestingly, specifically about senior leadership and their role in change. And I guess there's a school of thought that says leaders are probably likely to be those who can affect the greatest impact in a change process. Is that something you'd support?
Senior leaders or leaders generally?
Yeah. Senior leaders.
No.
Interesting.
No. It's an interesting one. How many times have we heard somebody say they make great decisions for the business, but not so much on the people?
Yeah.
If we think about a hierarchical organization, and if we think about a kind of triangle with change agents in it, if we're very at the top, our access to other people in the organization who have to deliver that change is actually quite limited.
Yes.
And that can sometimes be called the optimism ring. Now, a savvy senior leader will say, we can only see so much. And they will encourage people to come to them.
Yeah.
But the onus is on them then to be able to overtly say, somebody brought this to my attention, and this is what I'm going to do about it. So I'm going to do something, I'm doing it, and I've done it. And only then might some people really cotton on to the fact that something's happened. I think it's really important to remember how opaque some of this stuff actually is. There will be emerging areas of expertise and capability at other levels in the organisation that are better served to influence larger groups of people. So what I would really like to be able to see are better connections between cohorts of leaders around what's important and what everyone wants to see. And I'd also like to see us move away from a sort of gradist and elitist sense pools of leaders. For example, our graduate talent or our high potential pool, to looking at leaders as people who have followers and who are also good humans. A good leader is a good human. And I think I really want any leader to understand their behavior as a good leader and to be asking courageous questions. So I want any leader in an organization to say what's important. Where could we be more courageous? How can I get out of your way? And what's not simple right now? Because one of the most disempowering beliefs that I hear is people say it has to come from the top. Like, well, what are you going to do then? And I think that my worry might be that people unconsciously disempower themselves with that belief, because it's just not useful. How can you do a good day's work if you think somebody else it's going to come from somewhere else? But then if we do want to work that way, we need more sharing of information. We need better understanding of risk, of goals, and we probably need more frequent touch points with that material rather than more frequent touch points with our to-do lists. And kind of blocking, like, don't come to me with problems, come to me with solutions. Okay, well, how resourced am I to do that? I think that for me, and resource not only in terms of our kind of measurables, but resourced in terms of emotional capital. So I think the best thing any leader can do right now is be attuned to people's experiences of the workplace and the world beyond that.
Okay. In summary then, what would your key recommendations be for leaders who are thinking of embarking on some kind of culture change process right now?
I would like to see people being very explicit with the drivers for culture change. So it might be in response to an external imperative. It might be to do with wanting a better employee experience due to changes in the environment. It might be to be more profitable. It might be to stabilize. It might be to innovate. So I'd like to always start with why. Why are we doing this? Because I mean, like I said before, culture is people speak about it in such neutral terms, like it's just there. Like culture eats strategy for breakfast. It doesn't matter that culture will always get in the way. But that's taking quite a passive view of what culture is. I think the other thing I'd like to see leaders do is not talk about what type of culture they have, but be more clear about the features of any organizational culture, because that gives us more to do. So whatever type of culture people think they have, the key things to remember, it kind of functions on an implicit level. So it's implicit, so it's shared. So people cotton onto it very, very quickly. We're hardwired to adapt to a prevailing culture, which is a good thing, because that means we're hardwired to adapt to a new one. To see the right signals, we can adapt to them. So that we understand culture functions implicitly, but that's not the same as passive. That it's shared, which means we can pick up on it. It's pervasive. So if we are bringing in new things, we have to understand where the barriers might be to these new interventions and what's likely to get in the way. And it's enduring, which is why storytelling is so important. Why understanding your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. That's an enduring culture. If I think about the types of places I like to go now, either because I want to buy something, or I want a service, or I've got to think about an area of my life, I'm looking at the places where if I step through the front door, virtually and otherwise, I know people are equipped to solve the problem. I can ask a question, and they want to work there. People that tell me that they would still bike 45 minutes to show up to a place of work. That's your enduring culture. It's not a big banner that says "cut me and I bleed X." That's just somebody telling me something. So I think really thinking about the soft power, and stopping to look at where we can gather evidence quickly about that and share it with people. That would be what I would really like to see people do to embark upon culture change and really involve people. Involving is such an easy thing to say. And it doesn't mean asking somebody once, is everyone all right with that, in a crowded virtual space or in a crowded physical space, without taking account of different people's participation styles. And I think if we do that bit well, that's where we get ideas. And that's also how people know they've done a good job. So thinking about purpose and outcome, how people feel engaged. They're easy things to invite, but it's far harder to listen to the answers. So really taking the time after that to curiously interrogate what people mean, but always with the needs of the business in mind. And that's fine too. There's people do have jobs to do. That's what ensures a lot of purpose and fulfillment and results. And I think the other thing to remember as well is that people and results matter equally, because you don't get one without the other.
Amazing. Wow, I think you've given us some terrific advice and insights today.
Thank you.
And for that, I'd like to thank you very much. And also to everyone who's joined us today to listen, a big thank you. And if you're thinking of embarking on any change in your business, we'd be more than happy to listen and talk you through those. Naomi's contact details and the Work Horizons contact details will be coming up on the screen shortly. So if you'd like to get in touch with us, please do so. Naomi, thanks a million for your time today. It's been brilliant talking to you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me.